It's a Friday, 5 o'clock in the east, 2 o'clock out west. We start this hour with the new threat for thousands in Nepal who are in the path of those devastating floods. The Nepalese government is now pleading with people to move to higher ground with a new report here that a lake is starting to overflow. The number of people missing doubling in just the past day, including dozens of Americans. We are live in Nepal with the latest. Also new today, verdict watch in the case of a Massachusetts mother accused of murdering her 3 children. The questions from the jury that may give us some insight into their thinking as we hear from Lindsay Clancy's attorney, our team live outside of court. And then the new ruling from a judge that may push back the trial of the alleged 9/11 mastermind. The key piece of evidence that prosecutors are now not allowed to use at trial. Plus, in our original part 2 of our NBC News investigation into how North Korea funds its nuclear program by infiltrating U.S. firms. Our Richard Engel speaking with an American who helps the scheme work. You don't want to miss this. And my up-close look at the new Deep Space Telescope launching this weekend that will reveal the universe in ways even NASA cannot predict. And boy, are they thrilled. That's later in the newscast. Good day. Happy Friday. I'm in for Hallie. I'm Tom Costello. We begin this Friday with the people of Nepal facing a new threat after reports that a lake in the region has started to overflow. Army officers there are saying that rescue operations had to be stopped briefly out of fear that fresh floods would hit, and the government telling people to move to safer ground. Fortunately, rescue efforts have now picked back up again, and the number of people missing after this catastrophic flooding all along the country's border with Tibet, more than doubling in the past 24 hours alone. Search and rescue teams crawling through the mud, just trying to reach people who are buried in that muck. Nearly 600 people confirmed dead so far, with hundreds more still missing. And the State Department is now saying that about 90 Americans are unaccounted for. Take a look. A helicopter rescue underway right there. There have been multiple chopper rescues we've seen over the past 2 days or so. Satellite images show the extent of the devastation before and after. Look at that. The flooding sent mud and debris sweeping through the valleys as well as villages, just wiping them off the map. We have team coverage on this. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns will give us a look at how this happened, what's going to come. Plus, we want to get to NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer. She's in Nepal, right on the ground. Janice, what is the risk level right now where you are of that lake significantly overflowing? And then do we expect any further disruptions in the rescue operations?
Well, the immediate concern about a catastrophic flood seems to have eased, Tom, but that doesn't mean the danger is past. You see, there's a lake on the Tibetan side that was formed with all of that flood water on the Tibetan side, and it's being held together with debris, so it's considered unstable. At this point, it appears that the lake is still filling up. There have been some leaks. But the concern is that if there's rainfall or something else that triggers a shift in that lake, then there could be more flooding downstream in Nepal. And that was the concern, panic even today, where we were up in the flood zone. There was an alert that went across as well. There were police officers and rescue workers using megaphones and whistles, screaming at people to get away from the river. Their concern was that the water level was already rising. They didn't know what to expect. And this is a region that is already reeling from the catastrophic flooding of a few days ago. Rescue operations were able to resume later in the day, but it really does show how this is still all a moving target. Tom?
Boy, those images of those rescuers crawling on their hands and knees through the mud. Do we know anything about who the Americans are who might be missing, and what do humanitarian efforts look like from where you are?
Well, the images that you're talking about with the rescuers, as you say, literally crawling through the mud to reach people, to grab them and pull them out of the sludge. This is an example of why the number of missing has nearly doubled. There are nearly 900 people who are reported missing from hydropower projects throughout that region in the Himalayas. That is why we saw the spike in the number of people missing, and you saw the sort of conditions that rescuers are encountering in these places. So we can understand why this is such a treacherous mission. We still don't have more information on the 90 Americans who are still reported missing. 3 have been confirmed found, but the roads have been cut, the communications are still cut, and rescuers really do have such a job ahead of them to try to account for all of these people. Tom?
Janice, I'm guessing, and you're there, but are they crawling on top of that mud to literally disperse their body weight out so they don't sink? In other words, they're trying to fan out their body weight. Is that what's happening?
They are. They're trying to distribute their weight so they can get over the mud to get to the people to pull them out. But we have to remember, too, mud is going to harden. And these are some of the conditions that the rescue workers are also keeping in mind as they rush to get to these people.
Terrific work, as always. Janice Mackey-Frayer on the ground in Nepal. Thank you, Janice. Let's get to NBC's Bill Cairns. And, Bill, everybody sees the video of this wall, the wall of water that is just cascading through this valley. And we're all asking the same thing. Where did all this water come from?
Yeah, that was the first thing I saw. I saw what looked like an inland tsunami coming down through the valley. And they've said now, Tom, that it was moving at times 60 to 80 miles per hour. And at times it was up to 150 feet high. I mean, the only thing I could think of was there must have been a huge lake that was dammed up. But there is no dam on that river. So I was like, and everyone else was, how could this possibly happen to have, look at the magnitude. I mean, that wall of water there had to at least be 60 to 80 feet high. And you can see the speed of it right there and the force of destruction. So it wasn't a dam that burst. So it was not a man-made dam. That's the key. That's the trick. So we first heard that there was an earthquake, but there wasn't an earthquake. Our U.S. Geological Survey actually looked at it. They said our tectonic plates didn't make any motions, but it was actually picked up. The earth shook. So what shook it? Well, this mountain did right here. This is the 99th tallest mountain on our planet. It's about 23,000 feet. Just for you reference that know Colorado, the tallest peak in Colorado isn't even 15,000 feet. So you have to add 7,000 feet on top of the tallest. And the top of this is gone. About half of this mountain collapsed. It went down in the valley, it hit, and it just clogged the river at the bottom. And so the river just built up and made a big, huge lake. Well, eventually, this natural dam, it burst. And when it burst, that was the result of what you saw. It was like a dam bursting, but it wasn't one that was man-made. It was a natural one because of the collapse of that glacier. And a lot of people want to know, what are the climate change aspects of this? Well, during ice ages, we build up ice. As we go away from ice ages, the glaciers slowly melt. Typically, it's a slow process, but because of global warming, we're actually warming at a higher rate, Tom. And they say in the last 60 years, it's increased about 4 times what it should be because of the added heat we're putting in the atmosphere. So it did contribute. It likely would have happened anyways eventually, but it definitely didn't help.
Yeah, great explanation, Bill. Thank you very much. Other news now, no verdict today in the trial of the Massachusetts mother accused of murdering her 3 small children. But we did get a question from jurors earlier. Not long into their deliberations, the jury asked to see the knife that Lindsay Clancy used in her suicide attempt and her pill bottles. During closing arguments yesterday, Clancy's defense attorney held up empty pill bottles that he said he found in Clancy's nightstand. The jury is deciding whether Lindsay Clancy should be held criminally responsible for strangling her 3 children to death back in January of 2023. The defense says she could not tell right from wrong because she was suffering from postpartum psychosis. But prosecutors allege she made a deliberate choice. Reporters outside of court have been speaking to Clancy's attorney about how his client is feeling right now.
Nervous, like I said before. She's very just sad, scared. Same she's been forever.
You say she's sad and scared. What is she? She's scared of the worst possible outcome?
What would you be scared of?
We want to bring in NBC Boston's courtroom insider on this, Sue O'Connell. She's been outside of court and in court for this entire hearing and trial. And Sue, the pills are a central argument for the defense, right? That Clancy was over-medicated, but prosecutors say she did not take all of her medications. Why might jurors be asking to see the pill bottles and the knife?
So, Tom, because we're in Massachusetts, we don't know a lot. The judge didn't tell us. We're not even sure if it was a question or just a note with a question about something. Look, the jurors generally have access to all the evidence that has been presented. They simply just have to ask a court officer to bring it in. But it appears here that they were asking for something special because it had to go to the judge. So maybe they wanted to take a closer look at the knife, maybe hold the bottles, look at the bottles. Now, remember, both of these things are what Lindsay Clancy, 2 of the 3 where she tried to kill herself. She slit her wrists and her throat with that knife, and she says that she took some medication in an effort to kill herself. But we didn't get any investigation into that. We don't know what the residue was. So perhaps there's a reason they want to look at this to really investigate and question the suicide attempt that she made. So that's all we can really take away from the information we got just sitting there watching, Tom.
Okay, and we're learning that one of the prosecution's rebuttal witnesses has now resigned from the children's hospital he worked at in Delaware. By the way, we should note that this witness was the only one who did not agree that Lindsay Clancy had a bipolar diagnosis. What do you make of this?
Yeah, well, Dr. Mack is definitely very experienced and very well known. However, he did not have a star torn, you could say, on his cross-examination by Kevin Reddington. And again, when you leave a trial where you entered wondering, was Lindsay Clancy mentally ill at all? And all the witnesses, expert witnesses except one, say, well, we believe she was bipolar. It really would take a little nick at your reputation. So we don't know much more information, but it is an interesting coincidence that one day he was an expert witness, the next day he didn't do well on the stand, and now he's resigned. Tom?
Interesting. Sue O'Connell, thank you very much, Sue. If you know or somebody you know is struggling or in emotional distress, you can text 988 or text HOME to the crisis line. Text 741-741. 2 U.S. officials tell NBC News that a military judge will not let prosecutors use a key piece of evidence against the alleged mastermind of the September 11th attacks just days after finally actually setting a trial date. In a new ruling, the judge overseeing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's death penalty case says prosecutors cannot use the confession statement that he made to the FBI in 2007. KSM's lawyers have argued the government has hidden details about torture techniques used by interrogators to extract that confession at Guantanamo Bay and other overseas CIA bases. All of it adding potential delays of the justice that the 9/11 families, the victims, the survivors are all seeking nearly 25 years after the attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people in New York, at the Pentagon, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. NBC's Courtney Cubie covers the Pentagon, of course. Courtney, the judge here set the trial date, as you said yesterday, to June of 28. I mean, we already have to wait nearly 2 years, right? But prosecutors now don't have a lot of time to respond to this ruling.
Yeah, so they have between 5 and 10 days. They can ask for an extension up to 10 days. But it's not really clear if they're going to appeal this. And one reason could be that exactly what you talked about, that trial date. So in the ruling by the judge earlier this week, where he set out the June 2028 trial date, he also established a whole series of specific dates where the prosecution and the defense have to file motions and have specific filings. It's date after date. Well, if in fact this is appealed, it could possibly set back that entire process and make the June 2028 date pushed back even further.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just, though, the alleged torture, right? There are other missteps that the judge is citing here.
Yeah, so one of those is that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was not told he could call a lawyer before he spoke, or he could have access to a lawyer before he spoke to the prosecutor. So this basically what a lot of this is dealing with is 4 days in 2007, January of 2007, when KSM was brought to Guantanamo and he was questioned by federal authorities for a number of days. Now, during that time, the judge is saying, because he had recently been at CIA sites overseas where he was subjected, according to a Senate report, he was subjected to these enhanced interrogation techniques. Because of that, the judge is saying, look, he may have still been under this feeling of being tortured. And that may have impacted how he spoke to these federal agents. And because of that, it's not clear that the statements that he gave during those 4 days were voluntary. And for that reason, they are being suppressed.
Okay, you cover military justice. And let me ask you this. Is a suspect who's being held in an overseas site, either Guantanamo or we're led to believe some of these CIA sites were in Eastern Europe, for example, would he also have the same rights as an American would have to get an attorney?
While he was at the CIA sites or while he was at Guantanamo?
Either one.
While he's at Guantanamo, he should have been told he could have access to an attorney. That's one of the things that the judge specifically says here was one of the missteps.
Got it. Courtney Cubey, thank you. Appreciate it. Great week for you. A lot of reporting there. A former Dallas Cowboys quarterback and CBS broadcaster has been hit with 3 new citations stemming from his DUI arrest in Wisconsin, and he's now breaking his silence. Now, you may remember the body cam footage from July of a Milwaukee sheriff's deputy pulling over Tony Romo. Romo was later taken to a police station where he underwent field sobriety tests. According to court documents, he performed, quote, poorly. And now he's facing even more citations over that incident. The first offense, operating while intoxicated, unsafe passing, and possessing open intoxicants in his car. A spokesperson for Romo told TMZ and the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that he accepts full responsibility for his actions and is taking proactive steps to resolve the matter. NBC News has reached out to his reps. We've not yet heard back. Romo due back in court on September 21st. NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris joining us now. Misty, Romo now faces 4 citations. Driving under the influence is serious, but in Wisconsin, these charges are not criminalized. So what sort of repercussions could he be facing?
Yeah, so they're not criminal, they're civil for first-time offenders. So for the most part, this is fines, maybe about $2,000 at most. But one of these civil citations is for refusal to take an intoxication test. Now, that's significant because it could result in the loss of a license for up to a year, and also that could be used as evidence to prove operating while intoxicated. So all of these citations are interlinked, and losing the license is probably the most serious repercussion that Romo could face.
I got to say, I think it's stunning that if you get arrested for DUI in Wisconsin the first time, it's not a criminal offense. Regardless, we do expect from his legal team a response, right? And how is he likely to respond? Is he going to waive any of these issues?
So a lot of times with first-time offenders, Tom, to your point, they're charged very differently than criminal, especially if there wasn't an injury or property damage. But here, when I see this statement from his rep, when I hear proactive steps, it usually means that perhaps he's engaging in a program, doing something that would help mitigate these citations, speaking about maybe just paying those fines and getting this off his record. I think probably the bigger fight, Tom, will be not losing his license. That could be the sticking point in this case.
Got it. Misty Maris, thank you very much. To a Texas courtroom now, where a group just won a battle in the ongoing war over plans to build a U.S. border wall in Big Bend National Park. A federal judge has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to stop work until September 15th. You can see protests breaking out at the courthouse today over the controversial project that's raising concerns from members of the Apache tribe who saw crews have already destroyed ancestral sites and archaeological artifacts. This video shared as evidence for the first time today showing bulldozers plowing through Big Bend to build a road alongside the Rio Grande River. That work, part of an estimated $1.7 billion border wall contract awarded by U.S. Customs and Border Protection this past May. Government lawyers said in court today that it is within its rights to use its own land in this way as the Trump administration works to curb the flow of immigration across the border. NBC's Morgan Chesky following this story for us. And Morgan, it sounds like the judge had a few reasons for issuing this restraining order. Is that right?
Yeah, several reasons, Tom. And one of those was the ambiguity that's really surrounded this federal work since it began earlier this month in an area that, mind you, accounts for about 1 to 1.5% of all illegal border crossings on the U.S. border. Now, we heard government attorneys admit that despite the bulldozing in the park that's already taken place, CBP has yet to make a final decision on where exactly this border barrier would go. They also claim that the only activity that's happened so far has been repairing roads and clearing vegetation for a survey. Now, plaintiffs' attorneys pointed to the sweeping waivers by DHS that bypassed dozens of environmental, cultural and historic preservation laws. We have a list of them right here. Among this list of several dozen includes the Clean Water as well as the Endangered Species Act. And important to note here, Tom, one law that was not waived, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, known as RFRA. Members of the Apache tribe arguing that by destroying this area, which does include burial sites, they're unable to practice their religion.
You know, I saw an interview recently, I think it was with a sheriff in that region who said, we don't need a border wall here because the landscape itself acts as a natural wall.
That's right. And we know that plaintiffs also argued here, Tom, because this contract impacts a national park, that the power lies with the Department of the Interior and not the Department of Homeland Security. In closing, government attorneys stress that there is not a border wall going up in the traditional sense. But it was telling to hear the final comments from the judge, pausing work until September 15th or longer, adding just because the government can do this doesn't mean they should do this. Tom?
Yeah. Morgan Chesky, as always, on all things Texas, a Texas man. Thank you very much, Morgan. A far-right commentator now in ICE detention. Coming up, what Homeland Security says about his arrest. Plus, the emotional moment an Illinois family was reunited with their missing dog. How Floor found her way home 12 years later. We're back, and a one-time prominent supporter of President Trump associated with the so-called alt-right movement is now in ICE custody. Milo Yiannopoulos is in detention pending removal after an arrest in and at the airport in New Orleans. He is a UK national. You may recognize him. He became a big media figure on the right during the first Trump term. He faced accusations of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and faced backlash for polarizing comments about sexual abuse. He eventually disavowed his support for the president and worked for both far-right ex-Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kanye West. NBC's Gary Grunlock is here joining us to get into this. I understand we just now heard from DHS on this case.
Yeah, we did. So Milo Yiannopoulos was arrested yesterday at the New Orleans International Airport there in Louisiana. They say that he is now in ICE custody, and they say he had entered the country legally in May of 2019. Clearly, he had some sort of visa. We don't know yet what exact kind of visa he had, that he was staying in this country illegally. But then he missed a check-in and missed an appointment down with the ICE facility last month in July 22nd. An immigration judge, because of that, issued a final order of removal, something many folks here over the Trump administration's second term have gotten. And because of that, he was picked up by federal law enforcement at the airport yesterday in New Orleans. He will remain in ICE custody pending his removal. Now, this is somebody who has espoused white nationalist views, somebody who has espoused anti-Semitic views, incredibly racist comments online that actually got him banned from Facebook and Twitter. He's also somebody who was associated with Kanye West's presidential campaign, Tom.
Okay, and so he's soon to be out of the country.
Very likely, depending on how quickly they can get him out of the country.
Gary, thank you very much. Okay, over now to the 5 things our team thinks you may want to know about on this Friday. Number 1, a federal investigation finds there were serious concerns about a chemical tank before it failed at a Washington paper mill back in May. As you may remember, 11 people were killed. The report says the plant's owner was told by an inspector 10 months earlier that the tank was not fit for continued service, adding that there was a high likelihood of failure if it wasn't repaired. In a statement, the owner says it's committed to a thorough independent investigation. Number 2, new plans in Tennessee to celebrate the life of Dolly Parton. The governor is proposing that Nashville's airport be renamed in her honor. He's calling it a lasting tribute to her remarkable life and immeasurable impact. A meeting to take up the idea set for next month. Number 3, remember that crucial 13th test flight for SpaceX's Starship last month? The spacecraft was just recovered from the Indian Ocean, and guess what? It is fully intact. This is the first Starship to survive the hour-long flight and splashdown. It's now being brought back to Texas, but the trip will take months, as you would expect. Number 4, a California search and rescue team saved a man trapped on a ledge in the Sierra Nevada mountains. He was stuck for 9 hours at nearly 11,000 feet. High winds prevented an air rescue, so a climbing team scaled the mountain with a complicated system of ropes to get close to him. The man was then brought safely down to the ground. At number 5, an emotional reunion in Illinois. A family reunited with its missing dog after 12 years.
I had not fully given up on her, but no, it's just like so many years had passed, and I was like, I don't think I'll ever see her again.
Floor found in Indiana by somebody helping to clean up from the flooding there. Animal control discovered she was microchipped, and that set off the chain of events that led to her reunion. We don't know if she remembers the family, but the family remembers her. Coming up, part 2 of Richard Engel's look at North Korea's remote work scheme, what he discovered after one of those laptops was opened inside of a Florida home. We're back, and we want to bring you today's original in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on, and right now, part 2 of Richard Engel's investigation into North Korea's massive scheme, utilizing a vast network of skilled IT workers to remotely earn income by getting jobs at American companies, all to fund North Korea's nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. Richard interviewed a cybersecurity firm that caught one of these suspected operatives in the act as they interviewed him for a position at the company. They sent this candidate a laptop to try to gain better access to his network, and somebody actually signed to receive that package at an unassuming home in Florida. The cyber team then had access to the computer's camera, and when it was opened, to their surprise, it showed a room full of laptops and essentially a closet. U.S. authorities know these schemes rely in part on ordinary Americans willing to help by hosting these laptops. So Richard went to Florida to speak with one of those people.
I managed to get in touch with the suspected American facilitator, presumed by the intelligence and cybersecurity firm Nisos to be working for the North Koreans.
Nathan.
Yes, sir.
How are you? Can you see me?
I can, sir.
Okay. I'm just looking at a ceiling fan. Is that the intention?
If that's all right with you, yes, sir.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to chat. What can I do for you?
Okay, I'm recording this, and you can record it on your end just so that nobody says I said something that I didn't say, you said something you didn't say, just so you're aware. It's okay, so that's your ceiling fan. So I'm doing a story about IT workers scheme that involves North Korea. Do you know anything about that?
Wow. Not familiar at all. Happy to listen, happy to learn.
Happy to listen, happy to learn. Do you host laptops in your house?
I do not, no.
Have you ever heard of a company called Nisos?
I have not.
Because they've heard of you, and they say that you were hosting, or you signed for a laptop, and that laptop was being operated by North Koreans.
Yeah, I'm not sure of anything of what you're talking about, my friend.
Nisos says that laptop was connected to a network at your place, and they were able to open the camera and see like all kinds of other laptops there, and that it was basically a laptop farm being run by North Koreans.
Wow. That's pretty scary stuff.
You know, I'm not calling you by accident here. You know, I have the address. This company sort of was tracking this machine. They were able to get into this machine, and they were tracking it at the addresses where you were living, where this laptop was living, connected to a network run by North Koreans. That's the issue.
Whatever.
That's why I'm calling you.
Record, and you can go tell other people because it's being recorded. If you're able to turn off the recording, I'm happy to chat with you. But I can't have. I'm not really comfortable discussing it on the record. You know what I mean? I don't really know what you're talking about. I'd love to ask more questions.
They need facilitators in the U.S. to host these laptops. And I'm asking you, Are you one of these facilitators?
Let me know when we go off the record and we can chat, okay?
All right. I'll call you back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We didn't seem to be getting any further with him as the cameras rolled, so I continued my conversation with Nathan off the record. NBC News asked the FBI if information Nisos provided them led to an investigation. An FBI spokesman told us, in keeping with Department of Justice policy, the FBI can neither confirm nor deny conducting specific investigations. But a source with knowledge of the events told NBC News Nathan spoke to U.S. authorities. We don't know the outcome of the conversation. In other cases, people have been convicted.
This is a code red. Your tech sectors are being infiltrated by North Korea.
While the full extent of North Korea's infiltration is unknown, 29 suspected laptop farms were raided by U.S. authorities in 2025. And investigations have already resulted in 8 convictions this year.
We call these laptop farms, where they'll host the laptop so the North Korean can pretend like they're in the U.S. And not only are they victimizing U.S. companies by obtaining unlawful access, they also use stolen U.S. identities to get paid.
Roman Rozhavsky is the special agent leading the FBI's counterintelligence and espionage division.
You're picking up these facilitators, who are pretty low on the totem pole. They're the people who open the bank accounts or leave the laptops on. Do you ever get to the people in charge?
We have indicted individual IT workers, and every once in a while we'll indict larger, bankers who facilitate the larger movement of this money. And we do try to go as far up the food chain as we can, but with most of them being in Russia and China, it's difficult. So our biggest priority is to kind of harden defenses here and to, protect U.S. companies and citizens from being victimized. The FBI and our partners are committed to using every tool at our disposal to deny North Korea its profits and cut into funding for their weapons program.
During the Korean War, 200,000 people lived in Pyongyang, the North Korean capital. By the end of the war, there were only 3 houses left standing.
A direct outgrowth of the Cold War, it was viewed as an effort to contain the spread of communism in Asia. After the war, the North Koreans rebuilt their capital city and turned it into a showcase. There are 15 million people living in the north. 1 million of them live in the capital.
Suffering under sanctions imposed over the decades following the war and spurred on by an ideology of radical self-reliance, North Korea turned to illicit industries, arms smuggling, counterfeiting, drug trafficking, to keep the system afloat. And early on, the regime recognized the potential of cyber warfare and cyber crime that Kim Jong-un would fashion into his so-called all-purpose sword to expand North Korea's nuclear weapons program. As the country was parodied in the West for its propaganda, the parades, performances, and bombast, North Korean leaders were building a capacity that could challenge its biggest adversaries.
Because it's such a closed society and because it's so hard to get, credible information about it, people still see it as very much a caricature of itself.
Jenny Town heads 38 North, an organization studying the secretive state.
The impression people have of North Korea is of this cartoonish, sort of chubby evil dictator, and doesn't get much deeper than that.
Well, and that is part of the reason why we started 38 North, of let's have a real informed discussion about what's happening. There are certainly information controls, there are certainly human rights abuses, but, at the end of the day, it is a country that is consequential to our global security environment. His appearance at the Chinese military parade,
Sitting next to Xi, right?
not only sitting next to Xi, really held up as, those were the 3 main players, but with other world leaders behind him. That was, was his first foray into a multilateral forum, and to be held up in such regard was a huge breakthrough for him.
Kim Jong-un is more technologically inclined. He is a millennial. It's the all-purpose sword. He sees this as the way of the future, and he's not wrong. It's super, super effective.
Michael Barnhart is one of the foremost authorities on North Korean cybercrime.
I'm an intel guy. I've been doing this since 2 weeks after I turned 17. This is all I know.
How did you
kind of fall into it?
How did you fall into this? You spent time military intelligence, you were in Iraq, you're Afghanistan. Why did you start focusing on North Korea?
It was kind of an accident, really, because we would get hit by all of the nation states, but whenever we get hit by North Korea, we had no answer for it.
North Korea's cyber capabilities became clear to the world in 2014 when their cyber army hacked Sony Pictures,
On our broadcast tonight, who's to blame for the withering, continuing electronic attack on Sony Pictures? Publicly, the White House won't say. Privately, the feds are pointing to North Korea. And what does that mean for national security?
Then came a wave of complex cyber attacks targeting multiple U.S. industries and government agencies.
They were running rampant, and they hacked NASA. They hacked government facility, military installations. So these guys
were able to hack into NASA?
Yeah, so they're knocking over huge names.
Barnhart now leads nation-state threat intelligence at DTEX, a cybersecurity firm, studying North Korea's military hacking tactics, from state espionage to revenue generation, like IT work. Barnhart and Town are part of a group of North Korea and tech specialists calling themselves the Misfits. They assist law enforcement with cyber cases.
It initially started out from just like 5 of us in like 2016, but it really last year, it really took off, basically with IT workers. And these things take time to develop, whereas we can move a lot quicker, but we can't, go out and just hack whatever we want, do things like that.
You can't arrest people, put them in jail.
Exactly.
But you can move
We could point
faster
to the door.
than the speed of bureaucracy.
We could point to the door that needs to be hit, and then someone else can hit it later, or things like that.
In one alarming case, hackers targeted a rural hospital in Kansas in 2021, locking the computer system with ransomware, demanding a payment in Bitcoin.
There's these hospitals that are getting ransomed during the pandemic.
The hospital had no choice but to pay up.
A payment was promptly made on behalf of the hospital to the cryptocurrency address specified by the hackers, and the hospital was able to regain access to its servers.
Investigators on the case were able to learn a lot by following the money. They gained critical insight into how hackers turned cryptocurrency into cash, tracing the hospital's ransom payment through a complex web of crypto exchanges, covering their tracks with each transfer. The money was eventually withdrawn from one ATM in China, right near a bridge leading to North Korea. In a rare success, the FBI says it was able to return the money to at least 2 of the healthcare providers attacked. They eventually indicted a North Korean operative named Rim Jong-hyuk.
And once you find these guys or identify them, since they're in North Korea or remote parts of China, you can't really get to them.
Those type of guys, they don't ever leave North Korea because they know that as soon as they step foot out, then potentially they could either defect or they'd be caught. Fingers crossed we get some cuffs on some people one day, not just facilitators.
North Korea's cyber program is sophisticated and agile. In 2025 alone, North Korea's cryptocurrency heist probably stole $2 billion, which the IC assesses is helping to fund the regime and include further development of its strategic weapons programs.
They're doing it for the money. So if you can disrupt the money that they're stealing, that's a laudable goal. That is actually having an effect.
Nick Carlson was one of the first FBI specialists to focus on North Korean hacking.
You're a cyber guy, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm a money guy. I'm the money laundering guy.
But crypto, computers, digital currencies, sort of non-existent stuff.
Totally, yeah.
He's now a senior investigator at TRM Labs, tracing stolen cryptocurrency through Chinese money laundering networks.
Maybe step back a little bit, right? Is say North Korea, they steal $1.5 billion, right, earlier this year. But how does North Korea use that money? They can't take the crypto they stole and go buy food. They can't buy oil. They can't buy missile components with the crypto, right? So they need to convert that into real money, into dollars, into yuan in China. And the way they do that is by working with organized Chinese money laundering. That's who actually cleans the money for the North Koreans and makes it available to them. And so those people, that's who we should be going after. These are like Chinese gangs that have existed for hundreds of years, actually.
Like a mafia.
Yeah, they're the mafia. The North Koreans have deep relationships with these guys. And that Chinese money laundering group, they'll run it through really complex process, try to anonymize it, break the links from the theft. But then ultimately what they do is they sell it to another Chinese gangster who maybe has dollars or has yuan in China from, selling drugs or from human trafficking, from Mexican drug cartels. They'll have that cash and they'll trade the cash for the crypto.
In May, North Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson said the United States was spreading false information about a non-existent cyber threat for political purposes, describing the claim as nothing but an absurd slander to tarnish the image of our country. The complex money laundering system that has empowered the regime could be a vulnerability for investigators to exploit.
It might be too tall in order to actually hack their operations, but the North Koreans, they depend on all kinds of intermediaries to actually take advantage of the money they're stealing. We absolutely could be targeting them and disrupting them.
But North Korea has been underestimated before. Under its supreme leader, the rogue regime has proven to be resilient, adaptable, and unpredictable.
A lot of this was born out of the idea that our sanctions policy has cut off a lot of their economic development potential. So, instead of just rolling over and saying, oh, well, we give up, they've adapted, and cyber has given them the opportunity to do that. They've been successful in creating essentially a sovereign wealth fund full of stolen crypto assets that's more than what their economy was ever going to produce to begin with. The question is not how much are they cashing out? The question is how much purchasing power do they have in the global market now based on stolen crypto assets?
And he has nuclear weapons that work.
And he has nuclear weapons. In his mind, I think in the North Korean psyche, this is very much like we are not going to be an easy victim.
Richard Engel reporting there. Still ahead, a large crime ring now exposed because of a burglary at a home belonging to people who were killed in that Kenya chopper crash. The new warning from police. And like a scene out of a movie, police unmasking a suspect wearing a Scream costume. We'll tell you what crime he's now being accused of. We're back. Police in Florida say they have just discovered a massive identity theft ring. And what led them to crack it open was the arrest of two people suspected of burglarizing the home of a couple who died in that plane crash in Kenya last week. Police say the suspects targeted the couple's home when they heard they were killed in that crash. Detectives tracked the stolen items back to a home that they now describe as ground zero for identity theft.
We have basically kicked a beehive of a criminal enterprise, in my opinion. And we are going to be working very long hours to find out exactly how many people's lives they have impersonated for their own benefit.
NBC's Marquise Francis tracking this story for us. Marquise, I misspoke. Chopper crash, not a plane crash. But the police chief says the suspects printed the couple's address on fake IDs just 5 days after that crash. How exactly were police able to track them down as this was all unfolding?
Tom, these suspects may get the award for the most callous alleged burglary, robbing people who had just been announced dead less than 24 hours before. But they may also get the award for the silliest way of actually getting caught, because according to police, they were able to ping a stolen laptop and Range Rover that was stolen from the couple's home. And when police arrived, the Range Rover was parked right outside of the suspect's home in Miami. And so as you're seeing on the screen, now 40-year-old Gerber Garcia and 24-year-old Melanie Perdomo are facing multiple charges, including burglary and grand theft auto. The police chief of that soundbite you just showed called the entire ordeal reprehensible, shocking, and unfathomable, Tom.
And this has now opened up a whole, Pandora's box regarding this couple's so-called criminal enterprise, right?
Absolutely. The suspects are accused from stealing from that couple equipment, electronics, jewelry, documents, expensive artwork, even a $500,000 sculpture, including 2 cars. But once police got access to the suspect's home, that's when they found a treasure trove of even more, which included firearms, more documents, equipment to alter or create fraudulent passports, and get this, 20 key fobs corresponding to stolen cars. Take a listen to what the state's attorney had to say about all of this.
We issued a second search warrant, and that's when we were able to go in, or the officers were able to go in and seize a lot of the very interesting, mysterious, you might want to say really devastating IDs of other people, which, as the chief has said, would suggest that there's a much larger scheme here.
And Tom, because of the scope of this case, multiple federal agencies are now involved, including the Secret Service. And police say they are not ruling out potentially more people being involved because they say the suspects knew to go behind the liquor cabinet to disarm the security camera in the couple's home. And so, as you would expect, this investigation remains ongoing, and we will likely find out more details in the coming days and weeks, Tom.
Okay, Marquise Francis, thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of stories each day. Pretty tough to read, watch, or listen to everything. So our bureau teams have done it for you and me, and this is what they tell us is going down in the regions. We call it the local. From our Southern Bureau, check this out. A helicopter helping put out a boardwalk fire in Florida. There's the chopper swooping in low to dump the water. The Volusia County Fire Department says lightning sparked the fire. They credit the air unit with helping to prevent the fire from destroying the entire boardwalk. From our Washington Bureau, new video shows an arrest that looks straight out of Scooby-Doo. Fairfax County, Virginia detectives unmasking a guy who allegedly went on a so-called Scream destruction spree. He's accused of breaking windows at a community center wearing that mask and racking up $8,000 worth of damages, now facing multiple charges. And from our Northeast Bureau, a magnet fisherman triggered a serious scare after pulling this out of a Rhode Island river. That's a mortar shell. The area had to be evacuated. Thankfully, the bomb squad safely detonated it. Nobody injured. Still ahead from us, my in-depth look at the new telescope that could change how we look at the universe. We're coming back. Big news out of NASA Houston today, where President Trump has signed an executive order to create a new academy for the Space Force military branch.
It'll serve both the United States Space Force as well as NASA and the civilian spaceflight industry, and it'll attract, train, and graduate the very best of our nation.
No timeline on that, but also making history this weekend. NASA is launching a powerful new deep space telescope that could change the way we see the universe. And I recently went into the NASA clean room to get an up-close look. Ready for launch in Florida, the telescope that NASA believes will literally chart a new map, a new atlas of the universe. Named after NASA's first chief astronomer, the Nancy Grace Roman telescope will orbit 1 million miles from Earth, with a field of view 100 times wider than the Hubble telescope, and able to chart 200 times more sky in a single image than a Hubble image. Before Roman arrived in Florida, we suited up at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center to see it for ourselves, entering a clean room to keep hair and dust, even skin cells, from contaminating NASA's most advanced telescope yet.
We don't want anything on those beautiful optics, messing up any of our images.
Behind that mask is Mission Systems engineer Mark Melton. Are you guys excited?
Thrilled. When that first image comes down, I'm sure there'll be tears in my eyes.
Here's why. NASA has already confirmed roughly 6,000 planets. Roman is expected to discover tens of thousands of new planets beyond our solar system, millions of galaxies, and tens of billions of stars. So Roman is going to map out in 3D the universe, giving astronomers a view of how the universe changed and actually grew over time. And it will send back images, a massive trove of data that would take Hubble hundreds of years to capture.
My hope is that the most exciting science from Roman is the thing that I can't tell you yet, because we haven't discovered it.
And this may be what changes everything. Roman is carrying a coronagraph that will look at various planets' reflected light patterns, allowing scientists then to analyze a planet's chemistry. A future telescope will then use that data to zoom in on distant planets that could have the ingredients for life.
Roman is going to give us the capability to then build the instrument that will tell us whether there's life on other planets.
And that's what everybody wants to know.
I think everybody wants to know that, and if you give us some time, we will have the answer.
Roman, unlocking mysteries about dark energy, stars, planets, and galaxies far, far away.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh? That's a wrap for us this hour. Thanks for watching. This is Hallie Jackson Now on NBC News Now. Here we go, 6 o'clock on a Friday in the East. It is 3 o'clock in the West. And we start this hour with the new threat for thousands in Nepal who are in the path of those devastating floods. The Nepalese government pleading with people to move to higher ground with new reports that a lake has been overflowing or could. The number of people missing doubling in the last day, including dozens of Americans. We're going to be live in Nepal with the latest. Also new today, verdict watch in the case of that Massachusetts mother accused of murdering her 3 kids. The question from the jury that may give us some insight into their thinking as we hear from Lindsay Clancy's attorney, our team live outside of court. Plus, breaking news, the 2 new motions by the man convicted of murdering 4 University of Idaho students. Why Brian Kohlberger wants the judge in the case to be removed. Then an NBC News exclusive just now breaking. The defense secretary weighing his own run to become president. How the Pentagon is replying to our reporting on Pete Hegseth. And why police in Florida say they've been kicked in the behind of a criminal enterprise. In fact, they've done the kicking after a burglary at a home of a couple killed in Kenya. The new crimes that they are now pursuing coming up later in the newscast. Good day, I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie on this Friday, and we begin with the people of Nepal facing a new threat after reports that a lake in that region has started to overflow. Army officers in Nepal saying that rescue operations had to be briefly stopped out of concern that fresh floods would hit again. The government there is telling people move to safer ground. Fortunately, rescue efforts have, in fact, resumed. With the number of people missing after this catastrophic flooding along that country's border with Tibet more than doubling in the past 24 hours alone. Search and rescue teams crawling through the mud to try to save people. A dramatic video out of Nepal. In addition, 600 people nearly confirmed dead right now. Hundreds are still missing. And the State Department says roughly 90 Americans are unaccounted for. Take a look of a helicopter rescue underway there. We've seen this scene over and over again in Nepal. Dramatic rescues off of rooftops. Also, satellite images showing the extent of the devastation before and after. The flooding sent mud and debris just sweeping through the valley and wiping everything out. We have team coverage on this story. As you would expect, NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns will give us a look at why this happened. But first, we want to go to NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer. She's in Nepal. Janice, what is the risk level right now where you are of that lake significantly overflowing? And then do we expect any further disruptions in the rescue operations?
Well, the immediate concern about a catastrophic flood seems to have eased, Tom, but that doesn't mean the danger is past. You see, there's a lake on the Tibetan side that was formed with all of that flood water on the Tibetan side, and it's being held together with debris, so it's considered unstable. At this point, it appears that the lake is still filling up. There have been some leaks, but the concern is that if there's rainfall or something else that triggers a shift in that lake, then there could be more flooding downstream in Nepal. And that was the concern, panic even today, where we were up in the flood zone. There was an alert that went across as well. There were police officers and rescue workers using megaphones and whistles, screaming at people to get away from the river. Their concern was that the water level was already rising. They didn't know what to expect. And this is a region that is already reeling from the catastrophic flooding of a few days ago. Rescue operations were able to resume later in the day, but it really does show how this is still all a moving target. Tom?
Boy, those images of those rescuers crawling on their hands and knees through the mud. Do we know anything about who the Americans are who might be missing, and what do humanitarian efforts look like from where you are?
Well, the images that you're talking about with the rescuers as you say, literally crawling through the mud to reach people, to grab them and pull them out of the sludge. This is an example of why the number of missing has nearly doubled. There are nearly 900 people who are reported missing from hydropower projects throughout that region in the Himalayas. That is why we saw the spike in the number of people missing, and you saw the sort of conditions that rescuers are encountering in these places. So we can understand why this is such a treacherous mission. We still don't have more information on the 90 Americans who are still reported missing. 3 have been confirmed found, but the roads have been cut, the communications are still cut, and rescuers really do have such a job ahead of them to try to account for all of these people. Tom?
Janice, I'm guessing, and you're there, but are they crawling on top of that mud to literally disperse their body weight out so they don't sink? In other words, they're trying to fan out their body weight. Is that what's happening?
They are. They're trying to distribute their weight so they can get over the mud to get to the people to pull them out. But we have to remember, too, mud is going to harden. And these are some of the conditions that the rescue workers are also keeping in mind as they rush to get to these people.
Terrific work, as always. Janice Mackey-Freyer on the ground in Nepal. Thank you, Janice. Let's now get to NBC's Bill Cairns, who's standing by. And, Bill, Nepal is facing even more danger with rain in the forecast, I understand.
Yeah, and then the reason that's a concern is because we have these, debris fields that have caused new ponds and new lakes, and if it rains more, then those are going to build up and they can give way, and it's not going to be a flood like what we've already witnessed, but, it's going to mean the delays. They have to stop doing the search and the rescue because they're worried about the water levels coming up. So here's the satellite image of the area, and you can see some heavier rain and thunderstorms. The area of flood here's Kathmandu, where Janice was located, is to the north here. This is the section where we had all the significant flooding. So right now it's fine, but as we go throughout the weekend, our computer models are thinking we are going to get some of that tropical moisture in the air over the mountains, and we are going to get some heavier amounts. These are all the peaks of the mountains. That's why it's kind of spotted like this, but some areas are going to get 5 to 7 inches of rain. So that, at least theoretically, could cause some additional concerns and cause brief stops in the recovery efforts. A lot of people are still asking what caused the flood and how could this possibly happen? How did they have no warning? Why was no one monitoring it? You have to remember this is a very remote area. This is the actual mountain that collapsed. This is the glacier. The white here is the snow and the ice. You can see below it, we get into the rock and we get to the green of the valley below. This collapsed to the top. And we have an aerial view just to show you the perspective of how much of this mountain collapsed. So this is a peak that's 23,000 feet high, 99th tallest in the entire world, higher than anything we have in the lower 48. That's the before image. So the white you see there circled in red, that's just what I was pointing to on my map. Now let's show you the after of what the top of that mountain looks like. It looks like someone took a hot knife through butter and the whole entire north, west face of that mountain collapsed down into the valley about 5,000 feet lower, jammed up the river. The river kept flowing, obviously. It built up to this enormous, lake and pressure field behind the debris flow. And then when the debris flow let loose, you saw what happened. That wave was traveling at about 60 to an estimated 90 miles per hour. And it traveled for almost 60 miles, too. So, we're just seeing like little snippets and pictures where people took video, but there's just destruction up and down the entire valley. And finally, Tom, people wondering about the connection to climate change. And this would have happened naturally eventually, but because of the warming of our planet faster than normal, about 2 times warmer in the Himalayas, and over the past 60 years, the glacial loss has increased about 4 times as fast as it should be. So because of climate change, this likely happened, years before it normally would have.
That is the best description yet I've seen of what happened. Bill Cairns, thanks very much. No verdict today in the trial of the Massachusetts mother accused of murdering her 3 small children, but we do get a question. We heard a question, from jurors earlier today. Not long into their deliberations, the jury asked to see the knife that Lindsay Clancy used in her suicide attempt and also pill bottles. During closing arguments today, Clancy's defense attorney held up empty pill bottles that he said he found in Clancy's nightstand. The jury is deciding whether Lindsay Clancy should be held criminally responsible for strangling her 3 children to death back in January of 2023. The defense says she couldn't tell right from wrong because she was suffering from postpartum psychosis. But prosecutors allege she made a deliberate choice. Reporters outside of court swarming Clancy's attorney as he left court in the last few hours.
How is Lindsay feeling going into the weekend?
Nervous, scared, beat down as usual.
We want to bring in NBC Boston's courtroom insider on this, Sue O'Connell. She's been outside of court and in court for this entire hearing and trial. And Sue, the pills are a central argument for the defense, right? That Clancy was over-medicated, but prosecutors say she did not take all of her medications. Why might jurors be asking to see the pill bottles and the knife?
So, Tom, because we're in Massachusetts, we don't know a lot. The judge didn't tell us. We're not even sure if it was a question or just a note with a question about something. Look, the jurors generally have access to all the evidence that has been presented. They simply just have to ask a court officer to bring it in. But it appears here that they were asking for something special because it had to go to the judge. So maybe they wanted to take a closer look at the knife, maybe hold the bottles, look at the bottles. Now, remember, both of these things are what Lindsay Clancy, 2 of the 3 where she tried to kill herself. She slit her wrists and her throat with that knife, and she says that she took some medication in an effort to kill herself. But we didn't get any investigation into that. We don't know what the residue was. So perhaps there's a reason they want to look at this to really investigate and question the suicide attempt that she made. So that's all we can really take away from the information we got just sitting there watching, Tom.
Okay, and we're learning that one of the prosecution's rebuttal witnesses has now resigned from the children's hospital he worked at in Delaware. By the way, we should note that this witness was the only one who did not agree that Lindsay Clancy had a bipolar diagnosis. What do you make of this?
Yeah, well, Dr. Mack is definitely very experienced and very well known. However, he did not have a star torn, you could say, on his cross-examination by Kevin Reddington. And again, when you leave a trial where you entered wondering, was Lindsay Clancy mentally ill at all? And all the witnesses, all the expert witnesses except one say, well, we believe she was bipolar. It really would take a little nick at your reputation. So we don't know much more information, but it is an interesting coincidence that one day he was an expert witness, the next day he didn't do well on the stand, and now he's resigned. Tom?
Interesting. Sue O'Connell, thank you very much, Sue. If you know or somebody you know is struggling or in emotional distress, you can text 988 or text HOME to the crisis line. Text 741-741. We want to take you now to some breaking news in Idaho, where there is a new twist in the murders of those 4 University of Idaho students. And we are learning that their convicted killer, Brian Kohberger, has filed 2 new court motions. The first to have the judge on the case disqualified, and the second to move court proceedings back to the county where the murders happened. You'll remember this comes as Kohberger is now trying to withdraw his guilty plea after he admitted to murdering these 4 students back in November of 22. We want to bring in Misty Maris right now. Misty, what do you make of these latest motions here? Do they have any merit? Is Kohberger grasping at straws here? He's already pleaded guilty.
So the timing is really interesting, Tom. He just recently had an attorney assigned to represent him in the course of trying to undo his plea deal and ultimately get a new trial. So let's go through these 2 motions. The first is to remove Judge Hippler. Now, Judge Hippler is the one who oversaw Kohberger's case and ultimately imposed the sentence on Kohberger. In this motion, Kohberger says that Judge Hippler had some really harsh words when imposing that sentence, calling him a faceless loser, saying that he was a liar. And because of that, Hippler needs to be removed from the post-conviction case seeking to undo that plea. And that is a bit of a stretch. So, Tom, usually these cases, any type of post-conviction relief, it could go up the chain at some point, but it's going to start with the trial judge, and the trial judge is going to be the one to take that into account. And it's all based on communications that he says with his defense attorneys, that his defense attorneys basically pushed him and coerced him into taking a plea deal. I don't think this really has legs, but the argument is that those harsh words at his sentencing and other things and other decisions the judge had made as far as the timing for trial would be prejudicial to him, and therefore Judge Hippler has to be removed.
You know, you got to wonder if this isn't also intentionally torturing the families of these 4 victims. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. editorializing
Tom,
there.
Yeah, a note there. It also interesting, the other motion is to move this case back to Latah County, which the defense fought long and hard to get it out of that county because they said Koberger would face prejudice there. So it's really any and all arguments that can be thrown at the wall trying to undo this plea deal.
Misty Maris, as always, thanks very much. 2 U.S. officials tell NBC News that a military judge will not let prosecutors use a key piece of evidence against the alleged mastermind of the September 11th attacks just days after finally setting a trial date. In a new ruling, the judge overseeing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's death penalty case says prosecutors cannot use the confession statement that he made to the FBI back in 2007. KSM's lawyers have argued the government has hidden details about the torture techniques used by interrogators to extract the confessions at Guantanamo Bay and overseas CIA bases. All of it adding potential delays of justice that the 9/11 families, the victims, the survivors are seeking nearly 25 years after the attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people in New York City, at the Pentagon, and also in Pennsylvania. We will continue tracking that story as prosecutors weigh their next move. Breaking news as well from the Pentagon to the campaign trail. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has told close friends and associates that he is weighing a presidential run in 2028. That, according to 2 people familiar with the conversations. Who else but NBC's Courtney Cubie is part of the team breaking this exclusive reporting for us. All right, what more do we know about these conversations that he's apparently having?
So he's considering a presidential run in 2028. Now, this, according to us, as you said, 2 officials or sources who are familiar with these conversations. So what that we were told by these individuals is that Secretary Hegseth is having these conversations because he sees himself as having a lot of the same attributes that MAGA really likes about President Donald Trump. So things like being tough, being defiant, and being very willing to talk about some of these social issues and really go out on the campaign trail and talk about it. Look, when he goes out and speaks on the campaign trail, we just saw him at the Iowa State Fair earlier this month, campaigning for a Republican congressman out there. That raised a lot of eyebrows at the time. That is not what defense secretaries have done in the past, campaigning for Republican, for any candidate like that. But the Iowa State Fair, of all things, I mean, that is a place where candidates go and showcase themselves in advance of a big run. Of course, Secretary Hegseth has not actually held any elected office. Before he was Secretary of Defense, he was a host on Fox News Channel on the Weekend Show.
By the way, this isn't the only quote-unquote political action he's taken while he's been the DOD secretary.
Not at all. I mean, he has politicized the role more so than any Secretary of Defense since I've been covering since Donald Rumsfeld. And there are real questions about this for the American public. One of them would be he is under DOD statute, he is required to take U.S. military aircraft for any travel, personal, official, whatever it is. That includes these political trips. That means that when he does things like goes to the Iowa State Fair, he goes on a military aircraft. He takes military officials and his personnel with him. Yep. Taxpayers are paying for all of that.
Do we have any idea his popularity level outside of his inner circle, outside of D.C.? How does he play to Main Street Republicans?
So he's done 2 campaign events that have been public that we know about. One was the one in Iowa. Then he did one several months ago that was for the person who was challenging Thomas Massie, who ultimately beat Thomas Massie in the primary. In both cases, he was received well. He was received like a rock star. He used a lot of the same kind of language that we've heard him use, who've covered him in his time at the Pentagon. So, he was talked about, he likes to talk about no dudes in dresses in the military, those sorts of comments and those sorts of social comments with those friendly audience played really well.
Busy week for you, breaking a lot of news. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Courtney Cubie. To a Texas courtroom now where a group just won a battle in the ongoing war over plans to build a U.S. border wall in Big Bend National Park. A federal judge ordering the Department of Homeland Security to stop work until September 15th. Take a look here. Protests breaking out at the courthouse today over the controversial project that's raising concerns from members of the Apache tribe who say crews have already destroyed ancestral sites and archaeological artifacts. This video here, shared as evidence for the first time today, showing bulldozers plowing through Big Bend, a park there, to build a road alongside the Rio Grande River. And that work part of an estimated $1.7 billion border wall contract awarded by Customs and Border Protection this past May. Government lawyers say, they said in court today, actually, that it is within its rights to use its own land the way that it feels fit, as the Trump administration is working to curb the flow of immigration across the southern border. Make that NBC's Morgan Chesky following this. And Morgan, explain what's really at the heart of this fight.
Tom, a few key issues is what brought about this hearing today, and is one of the reasons we're seeing this restraining order being issued by the judge. And one of those is the ambiguity the judge pointed to that surrounded this federal work since it began earlier this month in an area that, mind you, accounts for about 1 to 1.5% of all illegal border crossings on the United States border. Now, we heard government attorneys today admit that despite the bulldozing we've seen in the park that's already taken place, CBP has yet to make a final decision on where exactly this border barrier would even go. And they also claim that the only activity that's happened was repairing roads and clearing vegetation for a, quote, survey. Plaintiffs pointed to the sweeping waivers by DHS that bypassed dozens of environmental, cultural, and historic preservation laws. We have a list of just some of them that were waived earlier this year. Among this list of more than 24, the Clean Water, the Endangered Species Act. However, there was one law that was not waived that was a key focal point today. That's the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, known as RFRA. And members of the Apache tribe argued that by destroying this area, which includes burial sites, they're unable to practice their religion. Take a listen.
I think we're all just looking for a little bit of more time to figure out a plan to save our parks, our I don't like using the word heritage, but our ancestral lands. And we have 15 more days to do that and to figure out the next steps.
Now, plaintiffs also argued, Tom, that because this contract impacts a national park, the power lies with the Department of the Interior and not DHS. In closing, the government attorney stressed that there is no border wall in the traditional sense that's being built, but it was telling to hear the final comments from the judge here, Tom. He says pausing work until September 15th or longer will take place. And he added that just because the government can do this doesn't necessarily mean that they should. Tom?
Morgan Chesky on the story. Morgan, thank you. Still ahead, a far-right commentator now in ICE detention. What Homeland Security says about his arrest. Plus, the emotional moment in an Illinois family was reunited with their missing dog, how Floor found her way home 12 years later. We're back, and a one-time prominent supporter of President Trump associated with the so-called alt-right movement is now in ICE custody. Milo Yiannopoulos is in detention pending removal after an arrest in and at the airport in New Orleans. He is a UK national. You may recognize him. He became a big media figure on the right during the first Trump term. He faced accusations of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and faced backlash for polarizing comments about sexual abuse. He eventually disavowed his support for the president and worked for both far-right ex-Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kanye West. NBC's Gary Grunlock is here joining us to get into this. I understand we just now heard from DHS on this case.
Yeah, we did. So Milo Yiannopoulos was arrested yesterday at the New Orleans International Airport there in Louisiana. They say that he is now in ICE custody, and they say he had entered the country legally in May of 2019. Clearly, he had some sort of visa. We don't know yet what exact kind of visa he had, that he was staying in this country illegally. But then he missed a check-in and missed an appointment down at the ICE facility in last month, in July 22nd. An immigration judge, because of that, issued a final order of removal, something many folks here over the Trump administration's second term have gotten. And because of that, he was picked up by federal law enforcement at the airport yesterday in New Orleans. He will remain in ICE custody pending his removal. But this is somebody who has espoused white nationalist views, somebody who has espoused anti-Semitic views, incredibly racist comments online that actually got him banned from Facebook and Twitter. He's also somebody who was associated with Kanye West's presidential campaign, Tom.
Okay, and so he's soon to be out of the country.
Very likely, depending on how quickly they can get him out of the country.
Gary, thank you very much. Okay, over now to the 5 things our team thinks you may want to know about on this Friday. Number 1, a federal investigation finds there were serious concerns about a chemical tank before it failed at a Washington paper mill back in May. As you may remember, 11 people were killed. The report says the plant's owner was told by an inspector 10 months earlier that the tank was not fit for continued service, adding that there was a high likelihood of failure if it wasn't repaired. In a statement, the owner says it's committed to a thorough independent investigation. Number 2, new plans in Tennessee to celebrate the life of Dolly Parton. The governor is proposing that Nashville's airport be renamed in her honor. He's calling it a lasting tribute to her remarkable life and immeasurable impact. A meeting to take up the idea set for next month. Number 3, remember that crucial 13th test flight for SpaceX's Starship last month? The spacecraft was just recovered from the Indian Ocean, and guess what? It is fully intact. This is the first Starship to survive the hour-long flight and splashdown. It's now being brought back to Texas, but the trip will take months, as you would expect. Number 4, a California search and rescue team saved a man trapped on a ledge in the Sierra Nevada mountains. He was stuck for 9 hours at nearly 11,000 feet. High winds prevented an air rescue, so a climbing team scaled the mountain with a complicated system of ropes to get close to him. The man was then brought safely down to the ground. And number 5, an emotional reunion in Illinois. A family reunited with its missing dog after 12 years.
I had not fully given up on her, but no, it's just like so many years had passed, and I was like, I don't think I'll ever see her again.
Floor found in Indiana by somebody helping to clean up from the flooding there. Animal control discovered she was microchipped, and that set off the chain of events that led to her reunion. We don't know if she remembers the family, but the family remembers her. Coming up, part 2 of Richard Engel's look at North Korea's remote work scheme, what he discovered after one of those laptops was opened inside of a Florida home. We're back, and we want to bring you today's original in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on, and right now, part 2 of Richard Engel's investigation into North Korea's massive scheme, utilizing a vast network of skilled IT workers to remotely earn income by getting jobs at American companies, all to fund North Korea's nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. Richard interviewed a cybersecurity firm that caught one of these suspected operatives in the act as they interviewed him for a position at the company. They sent this candidate a laptop to try to gain better access to his network, and somebody actually signed to receive that package at an unassuming home in Florida. The cyber team then had access to the computer's camera, and when it was opened, to their surprise, it showed a room full of laptops in essentially a closet. U.S. authorities know these schemes rely in part on ordinary Americans willing to help by hosting these laptops. So Richard went to Florida to speak with one of those people.
I managed to get in touch with the suspected American facilitator, presumed by the intelligence and cybersecurity firm Nisos to be working for the North Koreans.
Nathan.
Yes, sir.
How are you? Can you see me?
I can, sir.
Okay. I'm just looking at a ceiling fan. Is that the intention?
If that's all right with you, yes, sir.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to chat. What can I do for you?
Okay, I'm recording this, and you can record it on your end just so that nobody says I said something that I didn't say, you said something you didn't say, just so you're aware. It's okay, so that's your ceiling fan. So I'm doing a story about IT workers scheme that involves North Korea. Do you know anything about that?
Wow. Not familiar at all. Happy to listen, happy to learn.
Happy to listen, happy to learn. Do you host laptops in your house?
I do not, no.
Have you ever heard of a company called Nisos?
I have not.
Because they've heard of you, and they say that you were hosting, or you signed for a laptop, and that laptop was being operated by North Koreans.
Yeah, I'm not sure of anything of what you're talking about, my friend.
Nisos says that laptop was connected to a network at your place, and they were able to open the camera and see like all kinds of other laptops there, and that it was basically a laptop farm being run by North Koreans.
Wow. That's pretty scary stuff.
I'm not calling you by accident here. I have the address. This company sort of was tracking this machine. They were able to get into this machine, and they were tracking it at the addresses where you were living, where this laptop was living, connected to a network run by North Koreans. That's the issue.
Whatever I
That's
tell
why I'm
you is
calling
on
you.
record, and you can go tell other people because it's being recorded. If you're able to turn off the recording, I'm happy to chat with you, but I can't have. I'm not really comfortable discussing it on the record. You know what I mean? I don't really know what you're talking about. I'd love to ask more questions.
They need facilitators in the U.S. to host these laptops. And I'm asking you, are you one of these facilitators?
Let me know when we go off the record and we can chat, okay?
All right. I'll call you back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We didn't seem to be getting any further with him as the cameras rolled, so I continued my conversation with Nathan off the record. NBC News asked the FBI if information Nisos provided them led to an investigation. An FBI spokesman told us, in keeping with Department of Justice policy, the FBI can neither confirm nor deny conducting specific investigations. But a source with knowledge of the events told NBC News Nathan spoke to U.S. authorities. We don't know the outcome of the conversation. In other cases, people have been convicted.
This is a code red. Your tech sectors are being infiltrated by North Korea.
While the full extent of North Korea's infiltration is unknown, 29 suspected laptop farms were raided by U.S. authorities in 2025. And investigations have already resulted in 8 convictions this year.
We call these laptop farms, where they'll host the laptop so the North Korean can pretend like they're in the U.S. And not only are they victimizing U.S. companies by obtaining unlawful access, they also use stolen U.S. identities to get paid.
Roman Rozhavsky is the special agent leading the FBI's counterintelligence and espionage division.
You're picking up these facilitators, who are pretty low on the totem pole. They're the people who open the bank accounts or leave the laptops on. Do you ever get to the people in charge?
We have indicted individual IT workers, and every once in a while we'll indict larger, bankers who facilitate the larger movement of this money. And we do try to go as far up the food chain as we can, but with most of them being in Russia and China, it's difficult. So our biggest priority is to kind of harden defenses here and to, protect U.S. companies and citizens from being victimized. The FBI and our partners are committed to using every tool at our disposal to deny North Korea its profits and cut into funding for their weapons program.
During the Korean War, 200,000 people lived in Pyongyang, the North Korean capital. By the end of the war, there were only 3 houses left standing.
A direct outgrowth of the Cold War, it was viewed as an effort to contain the spread of communism in Asia. After the war, the North Koreans rebuilt their capital city and turned it into a showcase. There are 15 million people living in the north. 1 million of them live in the capital.
Suffering under sanctions imposed over the decades following the war and spurred on by an ideology of radical self-reliance, North Korea turned to illicit industries, arms smuggling, counterfeiting, drug trafficking, to keep the system afloat. And early on, the regime recognized the potential of cyber warfare and cyber crime that Kim Jong-un would fashion into his so-called all-purpose sword to expand North Korea's nuclear weapons program. As the country was parodied in the West for its propaganda, the parades, performances, and bombast, North Korean leaders were building a capacity that could challenge its biggest adversaries.
Because it's such a closed society and because it's so hard to get, credible information about it, people still see it as very much a caricature of itself.
Jenny Town heads 38 North, an organization studying the secretive state.
The impression people have of North Korea is of this cartoonish,
right,
chubby, evil dictator. and doesn't get much deeper than that.
Well, and that is part of the reason why we started 38 North, of like, let's have a real informed discussion about what's happening. There are certainly information controls, there are certainly human rights abuses, but at the end of the day, it is a country that is consequential to our global security environment. His appearance at the Chinese military parade.
Sitting next to Xi, right?
Not only sitting next to Xi, like really held up as, those were the three main players, but with other world leaders behind him. Like that was, was his first foray into a multilateral forum, and to be held up in such regard was a huge breakthrough for him.
Kim Jong-un is more technologically inclined. He is a millennial. It's the all-purpose sword. He sees this as the way of the future, and he's not wrong. It's super, super effective.
Michael Barnhart is one of the foremost authorities on North Korean cybercrime.
I'm an intel guy. I've been doing this since 2 weeks after I turned 17. This is all I know.
How did you
kind of fall into it?
How did you fall into this? You spent time military intelligence, you were in Iraq, you're Afghanistan. Why did you start focusing on North Korea?
It was kind of an accident, really, because we would get hit by all of the nation states, but whenever we get hit by North Korea, we had no answer for it.
North Korea's cyber capabilities became clear to the world in 2014 when their cyber army hacked Sony Pictures.
On our broadcast tonight, who's to blame for the withering, continuing electronic attack on Sony Pictures? Publicly, the White House won't say. Privately, the feds are pointing to North Korea. And what does that mean for national security?
Then came a wave of complex cyber attacks targeting multiple U.S. industries and government agencies.
They were running rampant, and they hacked NASA. They hacked government facility, military installations. So these guys
were able to hack into NASA?
Yeah, so they're knocking over huge names.
Barnhart now leads nation-state threat intelligence at DTEX, a cybersecurity firm, studying North Korea's military hacking tactics, from state espionage to revenue generation, like IT work. Barnhart and Town are part of a group of North Korea and tech specialists calling themselves the Misfits. They assist law enforcement with cyber cases.
It initially started out from just 5 of us in 2016, but it really last year, it really took off, basically with IT workers. And these things take time to develop, whereas we can move a lot quicker, but we can't, go out and just hack whatever we want, do things like that.
You can't arrest people, put them in jail.
Exactly.
But you can move
We could point to the door.
faster than the speed of bureaucracy.
We could point to the door that needs to be hit, and then someone else can hit it later, or things like that.
In one alarming case, hackers targeted a rural hospital in Kansas in 2021, locking the computer system with ransomware, demanding a payment in Bitcoin.
There's these hospitals that are getting ransomed during the pandemic.
The hospital had no choice but to pay up.
A payment was promptly made on behalf of the hospital to the cryptocurrency address specified by the hackers, and the hospital was able to regain access to its servers.
Investigators on the case were able to learn a lot by following the money. They gained critical insight into how hackers turned cryptocurrency into cash, tracing the hospital's ransom payment through a complex web of crypto exchanges, covering their tracks with each transfer. The money was eventually withdrawn from one ATM in China, right near a bridge leading to North Korea. In a rare success, the FBI says it was able to return the money to at least 2 of the healthcare providers attacked. They eventually indicted a North Korean operative named Rim Jong-hyuk.
And once you find these guys or identify them, since they're in North Korea or remote parts of China, you can't really get to them.
Those type of guys, they don't ever leave North Korea because they know that as soon as they step foot out, then potentially they could either defect or they'll be caught. Fingers crossed we get some cuffs on some people one day, not just facilitators.
North Korea's cyber program is sophisticated and agile. In 2025 alone, North Korea's cryptocurrency heist probably stole $2 billion, which the IC assesses is helping to fund the regime and include further development of its strategic weapons programs.
They're doing it for the money. So if you can disrupt the money that they're stealing, that's a laudable goal. That is actually having an effect.
Nick Carlson was one of the first FBI specialists to focus on North Korean hacking.
You're a cyber guy, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm the money guy. I'm the money laundering guy.
But crypto, computers, digital currencies, sort of non-existent stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
He's now a senior investigator at TRM Labs, tracing stolen cryptocurrency through Chinese money laundering networks.
Maybe step back a little bit, right? Is say North Korea, they steal $1.5 billion, right, earlier this year. But how does North Korea use that money? They can't take the crypto they stole and go buy food. They can't buy oil. They can't buy missile components with the crypto, right? So they need to convert that into real money, into dollars, into yuan in China. And the way they do that is by working with organized Chinese money laundering. That's who actually cleans the money for the North Koreans and makes it available to them. And so those people, that's who we should be going after. These are like Chinese gangs that have existed for hundreds of years, actually.
Like a mafia.
Yeah, they're the mafia. The North Koreans have deep relationships with these guys. And that Chinese money laundering group, they'll run it through really complex process, try to anonymize it, break the links from the theft. But then ultimately what they do is they sell it to another Chinese gangster who maybe has dollars or has yuan in China from, selling drugs or from human trafficking, from Mexican drug cartels. They'll have that cash and they'll trade the cash for the crypto.
In May, North Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson said the United States was spreading false information about a non-existent cyber threat for political purposes, describing the claim as nothing but an absurd slander to tarnish the image of our country. The complex money laundering system that has empowered the regime could be a vulnerability for investigators to exploit.
It might be too tall in order to actually hack their operations, but the North Koreans, they depend on all kinds of intermediaries to actually take advantage of the money they're stealing. We absolutely could be targeting them and disrupting them.
But North Korea has been underestimated before. Under its supreme leader, the rogue regime has proven to be resilient, adaptable, and unpredictable.
A lot of this was born out of the idea that our sanctions policy has cut off a lot of their economic development potential. So, instead of just rolling over and saying, oh, well, we give up, they've adapted, and cyber has given them the opportunity to do that. They've been successful in creating essentially a sovereign wealth fund full of stolen crypto assets that's more than what their economy was ever going to produce to begin with. The question is not how much are they cashing out? The question is how much purchasing power do they have in the global market now based on stolen crypto assets?
And he has nuclear weapons that work.
And he has nuclear weapons. In his mind, I think in the North Korean psyche, this is very much like we are not going to be an easy victim.
Richard Engel reporting there. Still ahead, a large crime ring now exposed because of a burglary at a home belonging to people who were killed in that Kenya chopper crash. The new warning from police. And like a scene out of a movie, police unmasking a suspect wearing a Scream costume. We'll tell you what crime he's now being accused of. We're back. Police in Florida say they have just discovered a massive identity theft ring. And what led them to crack it open was the arrest of two people suspected of burglarizing the home of a couple who died in that plane crash in Kenya last week. Police say the suspects targeted the couple's home when they heard they were killed in that crash. Detectives tracked the stolen items back to a home that they now describe as ground zero for identity theft.
We have basically kicked a beehive of a criminal enterprise, in my opinion. And we are going to be working very long hours to find out exactly how many people's lives they have impersonated for their own benefit.
NBC's Marquise Francis tracking this story for us. Marquise, I misspoke. Chopper crash, not a plane crash. But the police chief says the suspects printed the couple's address on fake IDs just 5 days after that crash. How exactly were police able to track them down as this was all unfolding?
Tom, these suspects may get the award for the most callous alleged burglary, robbing people who had just been announced dead less than 24 hours before. But they may also get the award for the silliest way of actually getting caught, because according to police, they were able to ping a stolen laptop and Range Rover that was stolen from the couple's home. And when police arrived, the Range Rover was parked right outside of the suspect's home in Miami. And so as you're seeing on the screen, now 40-year-old Gerbert Garcia and 24-year-old Melanie Perdomo are facing multiple charges, including burglary and grand theft auto. The police chief of that soundbite you just showed called the entire ordeal reprehensible, shocking, and unfathomable, Tom.
And this has now opened up a whole, Pandora's box regarding this couple's so-called criminal enterprise, right?
Absolutely. The suspects are accused from stealing from that couple equipment, electronics, jewelry, documents, expensive artwork, even a $500,000 sculpture, including 2 cars. But once police got access to the suspect's home, that's when they found a treasure trove of even more, which included firearms, more documents, equipment to alter or create fraudulent passports, and get this, 20 key fobs corresponding to stolen cars. Take a listen to what the state's attorney had to say about all of this.
We issued a second search warrant, and that's when we were able to go in, or the officers were able to go in and seize a lot of the very interesting, mysterious, you might want to say really devastating IDs of other people, which, as the chief has said, would suggest that there's a much larger scheme here.
And Tom, because of the scope of this case, multiple federal agencies are now involved, including the Secret Service. And police say they are not ruling out potentially more people being involved because they say the suspects knew to go behind the liquor cabinet to disarm the security camera in the couple's home. And so, as you would expect, this investigation remains ongoing, and we will likely find out more details in the coming days and weeks, Tom.
Okay, Marquise Francis, thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of stories each day. Pretty tough to read, watch, or listen to everything. So our bureau teams have done it for you and me, and this is what they tell us is going down in their regions. We call it the local. From our southern bureau, check this out. A helicopter helping put out a boardwalk fire in Florida. There's the chopper swooping in low to dump the water. The Volusia County Fire Department says lightning sparked the fire. They credit the air unit with helping to prevent the fire from destroying the entire boardwalk. From our Washington bureau, new video shows an arrest that looks straight out of Scooby-Doo. Fairfax County, Virginia detectives unmasking a guy who allegedly went on a so-called Scream destruction spree. He's accused of breaking windows at a community center wearing that mask and racking up $8,000 worth of damages, now facing multiple charges. And from our Northeast Bureau, a magnet fisherman triggered a serious scare after pulling this out of a Rhode Island river. That's a mortar shell. The area had to be evacuated. Thankfully, the bomb squad safely detonated it. Nobody injured. Still ahead from us, my in-depth look at the new telescope that could change how we look at the universe. We're coming back. Big news out of NASA Houston today, where President Trump has signed an executive order to create a new academy for the Space Force military branch.
It'll serve both the United States Space Force as well as NASA and the civilian spaceflight industry. And it'll attract, train, and graduate the very best of our nation.
No timeline on that, but also making history this weekend. NASA is launching a powerful new deep space telescope that could change the way we see the universe. And I recently went into the NASA clean room to get an up-close look. Ready for launch in Florida, the telescope that NASA believes will literally chart a new map, a new atlas of the universe. Named after NASA's first chief astronomer, the Nancy Grace Roman telescope will orbit 1 million miles from Earth, with a field of view 100 times wider than the Hubble telescope, and able to chart 200 times more sky in a single image than a Hubble image. Before Roman arrived in Florida, we suited up at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center to see it for ourselves, entering a clean room to keep hair and dust, even skin cells, from contaminating NASA's most advanced telescope yet.
We don't want anything on those beautiful optics, messing up any of our images.
Behind that mask is Mission Systems engineer Mark Melton. Are you guys excited?
Thrilled. When that first image comes down, I'm sure there'll be tears in my eyes.
Here's why. NASA has already confirmed roughly 6,000 planets. Roman is expected to discover tens of thousands of new planets beyond our solar system, millions of galaxies, and tens of billions of stars. So Roman is going to map out in 3D the universe, giving astronomers a view of how the universe changed and actually grew over time. And it will send back images, a massive trove of data that would take Hubble hundreds of years to capture.
My hope is that the most exciting science from Roman is the thing that I can't tell you yet, because we haven't discovered it.
And this may be what changes everything. Roman is carrying a coronagraph that will look at various planets' reflected light patterns, allowing scientists then to analyze a planet's chemistry. A future telescope will then use that data to zoom in on distant planets that could have the ingredients for life.
Roman is going to give us the capability to then build the instrument that will tell us whether there's life on other planets.
And that's what everybody wants to know.
I think everybody wants to know that, and if you give us some time, we will have the answer.
Roman, unlocking mysteries about dark energy, stars, planets, and galaxies far, far away. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh? That's a wrap for us this hour. Thanks for watching. This is Hallie Jackson Now on NBC News Now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.